Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of FinServ Tech Oracles. Now, the more astute among you will have noticed that I'm not your usual host, John Attil Johnson. I'm John Burke, Nemertes CTO, and here with my oracular colleague, Jerry Murphy, to share our thoughts on technology for financial services firms.
I'm glad
I
you
know, Jerry, you're
barely,
flabbergasted.
barely noticed, John.
For this episode, okay, just a hint, I'm the one with the beard. For this episode, Jerry wanted to talk about the executive order that President Joe Biden signed last Monday, mandating regulations and safety measures around AI. Now, for starters, what's actually in the order, Jerry?
Well, we don't have anywhere near the length of time to talk about what's in this order. It's 22 pages. But at a high level, what people really need to know is companies that are developing AI, if you're doing it, part of what this says is you need to connect red teaming exercises and share your findings of those exercises with the government. So if you're planning on creating, generative AI that's going to be doing something that's quote potentially damaging, you've got to actively test this stuff. You can't just hope it goes right. You have to actively test it and share that information with the government. The other thing that is in there is a lot of guidance to various agencies, whether it's the Department of Commerce, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Defense, National Security Agency, of things that they need to do, sometimes within 60 days, sometimes up to a year and a half, to implement the intentions of this document.
And I think their use of the term dual use throughout the document is really critical, because a lot of folks in IT are not used to thinking about their work as how could this be used to hurt people as opposed to get business done. So I think that's a really important consideration throughout there. So who does this apply to? Is this folks like Microsoft and Amazon only, or who?
Well, there are parts of it that seem pretty specific, and there are parts of it that are potentially open-ended. It explicitly calls for this to apply to infrastructure as a service IaaS companies. So if you are providing infrastructure, you're providing compute, data centers, storage for other people, it absolutely applies to you. IaaS is called up a name, and it doesn't say large ones. So it doesn't say only Amazon and Microsoft and Meta. It basically says any infrastructure as a service companies it applies to. And then it also calls out specific compute capability of your data center. And it has some specific guidance. For example, it says that if you're capable of doing a total of 10 to the 20th floating point operations per second, or a total of 10 to the 26th floating point operations, or if you have a throughput over 100 gigabits per second, they have some very specific requirements like that. If you have that capability, then this applies to you as well. And I would also say it says to the Chamber of Commerce, or the Commerce Department, I should say, that you can change what those standards are over time. And it doesn't say they got to be higher. They might decide that maybe they're lower.
All those folks building 100 gigabit per second -1 networks between their data centers to try and get around the regulation. Yep. So it's important probably also to keep in mind, especially for financial services companies, that this is within a broader context of global regulation. The EU is expected to reach a deal yet this year on its AI Act, which is an equally wide-ranging, probably more wide-ranging package aiming to protect consumers from potentially dangerous applications of AI. And the G7, which is not just the US and the biggest economies like France and Germany, but also Italy, Japan, Britain, Canada, and the EU as a body, they're all part of that group, and announcing at least voluntary guidance for companies, something they're calling the International Code of Conduct for Organizations Developing Advanced AI Systems. The guidelines, which are actually longer than the name of the guidelines, call on companies to conduct regular assessments of the risks of their models and devote attention to systems that could pose a threat to democratic values and societies. such as by enabling the easier creation of biological or nuclear weapons. Now, our executive order echoes a lot of those principles, so clearly was developed in concert with it. Bringing this home, if you're a financial services firm, what should you be doing?
Well, the first thing you should be doing, I would say, is if you're going to be using or you plan on using any types of AI technology, which many will, you certainly need to come up with a testing plan of those models. You certainly need to be documenting those models. You need to have a mitigation plan. So, how is it that I'm going to take any steps to mitigate any security problems, problems with inadvertent access to protected client information? You want to make sure that when you're building your models, you're certainly using private data stores, not public data stores. You probably need to get a sign off of whatever your plans are from your company's chief risk officer. And then finally, I would say if you're going to use these models after you've tested them, you should probably also have some caveat out there saying, anything that we're doing is being, generated using artificial intelligence. So if I'm going to be giving somebody financial advice, make sure that you have some disclaimer there to protect yourself from any liability that may occur as a result of using information and generating information for your clients that may be faulty.
I would only throw in, I think that folks who are developing these models are going to have to pay a lot more attention to how the parameters that basically define the model, how the parameters are protected within their organization, within their infrastructure, not just what are the technical protections on it, but who has access to that data, because that's in a way the crown jewels when you're talking about one of these big models.
And be prepared to be able to share that information with government regulated entities, because I wouldn't be surprised as the various government entities come up with the guidelines that the president has requested that they come up with. We will probably be seeing over the next 6, 12, 18 months specific reports that you may have to submit, information that you need to be able to share with these government agencies to prove that you're following these guidelines, that you've considered how you're protecting data and so on. Because my assumption is that entities, especially if you're a regulated entity like the financial services very much are, expect that they're going to be wanting you to share some of this kind of information with them.
Early and often, indeed, like voting in Chicago. So that's it until next week. Thanks for watching. You can register for the entire series online. Tune in next week at 0900 for the next episode of FinServ Tech Oracles, right before the markets open on Tuesdays.
Hope to see you then.
Thanks.